Hello, Paul. How are you?
Great, Joanne, and how are you?
I am well. I really appreciate you joining in to share your memories and your life experiences as a part of your living history. And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to preserve those memories for future generations. So, welcome, Paul Blackwell, and thank you for joining me. You may begin sharing whatever, wherever you
All
like.
right. It's definitely a pleasure, and I want to thank you first for having these sessions because it's important that we leave our history with the younger people.
Yes.
So this is definitely going to contribute to that result. So I'm going to begin by sharing some slides about my grandparents and some of the other family members, and then I'll talk a little afterwards. Here's a picture of my grandparents, Edward Lee and Celie Blackwell, Celie Hayes Blackwell. So I'll talk about them on a couple of slides first. Here they were when they were young, and he was a minister, okay, actually a bishop over a church, 16 church organization. So he was born in 1890, and she was born in 1894. So I'm a little bit of in a time warp because they were older people when I was born. He was born in Weaver, Alabama, but she was born in a place called Spring Garden, which was in Cherokee County, which was originally Cherokee land. And she was of that Cherokee uh, ancestry. Now, I have all the names of the daughters and the sons on the screen as well. Now, Gertie Mae, you probably remember her. She's Horace and Clifford's mother. And then you see my father, Paul Sr., listed as the next to youngest son. Now, here he is with all of his children after my grandmother's funeral in 1956. My father is the guy standing on the ground. Aunt Gertie is right next to him on the first step, and my father's twin sister, Pauline, is standing next to her. Okay, behind my father is Aunt Louise, and the one on crutches is Aunt Marie. My grandmother died as a result of an automobile accident. Marie was injured in that accident. And then there's Uncle Bob. You remember Uncle Bob from Detroit, and Uncle Charlie, the oldest. And I think you met Alonzo. You've talked to him a few times.
Okay.
This is his father.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, this is his father. Okay, John Henry and Uncle Bill. Okay. His daughter, one of his daughters might have come to one reunion. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we had Aunt Gladys. She was the next oldest daughter behind Aunt Gertie. Mm-hmm. Then there's Uncle James, and he's the academician of us all, and Uncle Jewel, the youngest son. Now, these two, Jewel and Marie, are the youngest of all of them.
The gentleman on the front row, who is that again?
This is my father, Paul Sr.
Okay, and behind him?
That's Uncle Willie. He lived in Los Angeles.
Oh, the female.
That's Aunt Louise. She also lived in the Los Angeles area.
Okay, thank you.
We covered them, but I want to mention that they had to leave Alabama at one time around 1918. And my grandfather and his brother Reagan moved to New York and ended up in Harlem. Okay. And he took his cousin with him. Well, his cousin went with him. His name was Walter, and his family moved with him. And his sister Jessie went with him to New York as well. Now, while in Harlem, his first job was a fireman on the train. But then he joined the UNIA, which was Marcus Garvey's organization, and he worked for the Black Star Line. Okay. And he also worked on construction on Ellis Island, and he took courses in hydraulics and machine operations, and Garvey inspired him to do that. Now, Gladys was born in Harlem while they were there. Eventually, he went back to Alabama because my grandmother said it was too cold there. But he took those skills back with him, and he became the first Black foundry millwright in Alabama because Anniston was part of the Pittsburgh of the South at that time. Then he established a construction company and started building houses. Now, during the Depression, he got contracts under the WPA with the city of Anniston. And then he poured sidewalks to beautify parks in the city and built a small bridge in the Oksana community of Anniston. Now, during the Depression, he provided food for families in his communication and provided coal to keep them warm in the winter. But in 1947, he was appointed to become the first presiding bishop over the Pure Holiness Churches of God. It was 16 churches under his purview. And he held that position to 1966. I can actually remember when he was the bishop. And my grandmother became an evangelist and a missionary. Now, this is my father, Paul Sr. When he was in the military, he was a veteran of the Korean conflict. Now, he says he was a twin to Pauline, the one that was pregnant. Okay, it shows that he was an honor student in high school, and he attended Tuskegee Institute. And he married my mother, Ruby Kate Robinson, in 1954. Well, I'll go back a minute here. And you see my siblings. You've met Cheryl, but you haven't met Crendel and Sheila. But they may be, one of them may be at the reunion this time around. In 1962, he purchased a former gym theater. Now, the gym theater is where Cap Calloway and some entertainers in that generation performed in Anniston. Mm-hmm. And he took it and turned it into a church. And my mother became the pastor. And they grew into 9 affiliated churches. Then he opened a restaurant. And the biggest thing that he did during the time that he had the restaurant, he fed 300 members of the Poor People's Campaign in 1968 in his restaurant. And then he was appointed to the board of directors of the County Water and Fire Protection Authority. And he actually started a subdivision in 50 acres in 1979. But he had encounters with the Klan, so he had to shut it down. He built the first house and they went out and burned it down. Now, this is Aunt Gladys. Now, she was born in 1919, as I said earlier, in Harlem, but she was able to see Obama be elected to president. So we thought this was a good picture to show how she never would have thought that she would have seen a Black man become president. Well, we didn't either, but she definitely didn't. And you see the little smile on her face. Okay, this is Uncle James. He was the academician of us all, as I said before. His wife was from New Orleans, but she gave up her career and to travel with him because she actually had been a medical researcher, and she was one of the first people to start research on an artificial heart. But he ended up with a PhD in sociology from Western Reserve in Cleveland. And he specialized in sociology and economics of the Black community and desegregation of higher education in the U.S. But he at the end of his career, he became the chair of the sociology and anthropology department at the University of Massachusetts at Boston, which is on the campus of Harvard. He structured his research on inequality within major social institutions, particularly in economics, professional marketplace, and education. And he was the first president of the Black sociologists in the United States and the American Sociological and he received this award, the Du Bois Johnson Award, in 1986. And he asked me to attend that, me and Renita. So that was quite an honor. Now, when I was a kid, this is what he was doing. He worked for the Peace Corps in Tanganyika, which is called Tanzania today. Now, that was during 1963 and 1964. And he also worked for the Peace Corps in Malawi. And he worked with USAID in Nepal. He was actually considered an ambassador when he was doing that job. The USAID that's just been closed down last year. And he wrote all these books let's see, how many is it? About 8 books. Some of them are really articles mixed in with it. A couple of them are. Okay. But you can see the subjects that he covered here. And they use these books in Ivy League schools. And then he was a consultant for the NAAC Legal Defense Fund. Okay. And you see some of the cases that he was an expert witness on here. And he used to call me in the middle of the night, and asking me about my experience in college, because he used my experience to show that we continue to need HBCUs, because that was an effort during the 80s and the early 90s where they were saying we don't need to fund HBCUs anymore. So I let him know what my experience was at a predominantly white school. And I emphasized that he was correct, that we still needed the HBCUs. Okay. Then he consulted with the Maryland Attorney General. And here I am with my family. Now, I'm not that much taller than them. I think I must have been standing on the high ground or something. I was, I guess, 22 years old right here, 23 on this picture. Okay. And you see my brother, my father and mother, you can tell them. And my brother Crendel, my sister Sheila, and my sister Cheryl, and me. Okay. And here I am as a young 34-year-old. Okay. And when I went to work for the Department of Defense, I worked with the Patriot missile system. Okay. And here's one of the awards that I received while I was doing that.
What was the award for?
Well, we had just fielded the Patriot missile system to Europe. So this was an award that he gave everyone that participated in that endeavor. Okay, as you know, I've always been into Black history. So this is just one of the posters that they used to advertise this during Black History Month, and I did it for Blacks in Government. Okay, Blacks in Government is an organization all over the government where we come together. I don't think they're doing it anymore, but we would come together and discuss issues that in our departments and develop strategies to address those issues. Now, I don't want to go too deep in that because I could get lost in that one. Okay.
Do you remember what year this was?
This was 1996. 1996.
Okay.
Okay. Now, how did we get to Alabama? Because, you know, the mother family is in Virginia. And so I'm going to use the next slide to address that. Okay. What me and cousin Thelma concluded on, but that there were 3 slave owners that from Lunenburg County by the name of Joel Blackwell. All of them were Joels. One was just Joel, and the other 2 were Joel Sr. and Joel Jr. Now, this is not the same Joel that's in the 1789 will of Robert Blackwell in Virginia. These are 3 different men. Okay. Well, they came into Mecklenburg County in 1767, and they eventually moved over to Rutherford County, North Carolina. Now, that part of Rutherford County is called Polk County now, but there still is a Rutherford County, but they divided it, and a portion of it became Polk County. Okay, so Joel, in the dark side on the screen over here, Joel Sr., he died around 1817, but his son James stayed in North Carolina until he died in 1853. But all of his other children and his widow, they began to migrate in 1825. She migrated into Elberton County, Georgia in 1825. And to show how many enslaved people they had, there was a precinct in Elberton that was named after the Blackwells. Okay. Then in 1832, they began to migrate in Alabama and on through Mississippi. But my group still didn't come in till 20 years later. Now, and then there was a migration that continued until between 1834 on over to 1858, and they went all the way to Texas before the Civil War. And I used to travel a lot for work, so I met a lot of these people, and they would tell me that their ancestors told them that they came from Alabama. Okay, all right. Now my group came in 1853. They migrated out of North Carolina in 1853 through Marietta, Georgia, on into Calhoun County, Alabama. Now, some of these people up here, they're down here, they moved in the area around Huntsville, Alabama, Scottsboro, that to be specific. And then I met people in Jackson, Mississippi. I used their wills and tests to follow them and to identify where the enslavers took our people. And then there was a migration directly from Lunenburg County to Kentucky in 1834. So that was the West was beginning to open up. Okay, so the slave owners began to migrate westward. And you see Caesar that you always talk about. I have him being bought by the Alabama Baptist Association in 1829. Now, there's a large group family in Huntsville, Madison County, by the name of Townsend, Black people. Now, they were actually sold from William Blackwell of Lunenburg County in 1832 to a guy named Samuel Townsend. Now, when I lived in Huntsville, I never talked to them about it because I didn't think they would be interested at the time. Right. Everybody would say that they really look like me, look like you. That's what they would tell me, but I never really tried to talk to them about it. Now, this is my grandfather's ancestry, beginning with Charles Blackwell, who was born in 1854, and he was the first of his family to be born in Alabama. Then I have his wife, and his father, and his mother, and his grandfather and grandmother, and his mother Winnie. Now, I can't really trace back to Ma, but I can trace back to Lunenburg County. Okay, so I don't really that's why I have to acknowledge that it's just a word of cousin Thelma that he may have been a descendant of someone in her clan. That's the point I want to make. Okay. Any questions about that?
No,
Joanne?
No.
Okay. Now I'm going to skip on through these. These are just more of his ancestry on his mother's side. Okay. And this is his grandmother. This is my grandfather's mother. Okay.
Before you go any further, I do
Sure.
have a question. So, Amar had children other than the daughter Tab. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it could be, but because cousin Thelma said that she left Africa with 10 children, but she thought she only made it here with one child. Did she ever talk to you about that?
No, she never told me that.
Yeah, that's what she told me. Now these are all, she knew some kind of way. Okay.
And I didn't find that in any of her documentation. How did she document that?
I don't know if she even documented it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can continue.
I'm going to skip on through these. Now, this guy, Columbus Taylor, was a Native American, okay? And this was his daughter, okay? My grandfather's mother. I'm going to skip on through these. This is my grandmother's family. And they were, her father was a Native American, Benjamin Hayes, and her mother might have been a Creek.
Is that the Cherokee, the one that was from Cherokee, Alabama?
Yeah, exactly. That's correct. You really picked up on that. Now, these are pictures from the family reunion that I grew up in. Okay. Now, the first family reunion Virginia family reunion I came to was in 1978. But I've attended reunions in Georgia, of course, Virginia, Alabama, North Carolina, and Jackson, Mississippi. Now, all of these, other than Virginia, migrated through North Carolina. Okay. All right. And you know about the one in Georgia because you remember we used to sing their national anthem. Okay. To the tune of Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Yes, yes.
Florine used to sing it. Okay. This is talking about regions of Africa that, so we would kind of have an idea where we came from. But I took this picture. This was in a museum in W.E.B. Du Bois's house, okay, in Accra, Ghana, and it was from a book called The Theft of African Civilization. So I explain all the regions of Africa in the top left corner, okay, and then I talk about how they had invaders into Africa that displaced the people and moved them around a lot. Then I show some of the history, little known facts about the Roman Empire and how the Babylonians actually displaced some of them as well, and how Christianity came into Africa at least 300 years before they accepted it in Europe. Okay. All right. And then they had the Inquisition, and they expelled some non-Catholics in 1492. But they had already started expelling them from other countries before that. Okay, so that went on into the Atlantic slave trade. Okay, there was a connection between the Atlantic slave trade and the Inquisition. That's the point I make. Have you heard of the Inquisition, Joanne?
Yes, I have.
Okay, but it's starting to come out more and more. Now, I built this slide 5 or 6 years ago, but it's coming out more and more, the link between the Inquisition and the slave trade.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions?
No, I'm fine. I'm just looking at it.
Okay, these are paintings that were drawn and painted in 1641 by a European by the name of Albert Eckhout. And it shows how he painted the Native Americans at that time. Okay. And you see what they look like. Okay, this is me crossing a hanging bridge in Ghana. Okay.
And when were you in Ghana?
I visited Ghana in 1995. Okay, this is in Dakar, Senegal, in a four-star hotel, me and a couple of the attendants. Now, this is looking out of the door of return at Gorée Island in Senegal, okay? And I went to Senegal earlier in 1995. This is the curator at Gorée Island, Boubacar Joseph Diane. Now, what got me is that he had actually been over here and spoken at places like Harvard, Yale, and all of those Ivy League schools, and we didn't even know anything about him, you know? All right. This is me entering Kumasi, which is the capital of the Ashanti region in Ghana. Okay, here's the tour guide at Elmina Castle, which was a slave castle in Cape Coast in Ghana, Cape Coast, Ghana. Then you see the female slave exit, the male slave exit, approaching the door of no return at Elmina. Now, you saw earlier the door of no return that was in Senegal at Gorée Island. This is at Cape Coast, Elmina. Okay. Here I am in Jamestown, which is supposedly one of the slums in Ghana. Then I went to Soweto and Johannesburg in 1998. And this is me and my friend at that time in Cape Town. South Africa. This is a woman here she was from Philadelphia, Joanne.
Oh, really?
And she was on that trip with us as well. We had several migrations during slavery from the west coast of Africa, from Lunenburg County to Rutherford County, and then from North Carolina to Alabama and beyond. Okay. And I know there's at least 5 annual reunions, Blackwell reunions. And it was based on the location of our ancestors after the Civil War and their migrations after enslavement. And we are accomplished people and a strong people. And we cannot ever forget those who went before us and served as a bridge from enslavement. Okay, I'll just talk. I can stop sharing now. Okay, in my early childhood, as I said before, I was born in the mid-50s in Anniston, Alabama, which was in the Jim Crow South. And it was a class society, to say the least. Black people didn't have any rights in that area. It was the place where the Freedom Riders were met with Molotov cocktails. If you've seen that on Eyes on the Prize. Yeah. When I started school, a few of my classmates couldn't come to school much in the spring because they stayed out to pick cotton if their families were sharecropping. We still had to ride on the back of the bus, and I have memories of that as well. Now, we lived 3.5 blocks from the Grand Cyclops, the leader of the county Klan organization. They burned a cross in our yard one night and tied a rock to a chicken and threw it into our living room window. And I remember the chicken running around in our living room. As a result, my father could not walk to work in the morning. And on voting days, my father could not walk to the voting polls. There were truckloads of white men looking for black men walking to the polls. So my father had to drive to the polls for his safety. However, somehow my parents taught me that there was one law for all people. I was blessed to have parents and grandparents that gave me a sense of self-respect. Now, other people respected me because of my parents and grandparents as well. My paternal grandfather, as I spoke of earlier, was a minister, a community servant, and a businessman. And I've spoken a little bit about him already, but I'll add these few notes. People would stop me when I was a teenager on the street to tell me about him. One black business owner told me that my grandfather and his older sons during the Depression told me about them. And because my father's 4 older brothers, Charlie, Robert, John Henry, and Willie, they would bring coal throughout the community to keep families warm in the winter because my grandfather had a sister that had whose son worked for one of the railways that came through Anniston, and he would shovel off coal every day, and they would pick it up and distribute it throughout the community. And I walked into a jewelry store one day, and the white proprietor asked me, "Who are you, young man?" And when I told him my name, the expression changed on his face. And I could tell that he was pondering about his past. Then he said he and his family would not have made it through the Depression without my grandfather. A white real estate magnate, his family told me that when my grandfather bought groceries for his family, he bought groceries for the entire community. Of course, many people knew my grandfather as the bishop over the church I told you about, and they respected me for that as well. Also, my mother, speaking about myself, became a preacher, and people knew me because of her in the community as well. She was genuinely concerned and helpful to poor children. I'll sum it up like this. If I didn't want to go to church, she made me go to church anyway. If she and my father were out of town on weekends, they would leave me with one of my grandfathers. And again, I told you about my paternal grandfather, Edward Blackwell, but my maternal grandfather was a veteran of World War I. He was in the 10th Cavalry, but he came back from the war to sharecropping after the war. So he just stopped. He had just stopped sharecropping in my time. When I first remember, he was a Baptist deacon in a church founded by his father approximately in 1880. And he had a convenience store attached to his home. So people in the community respected me because of him as well. The bottom line is that I was going to be going to church somewhere every Sunday morning, regardless. Okay.
I know that. I can identify.
Yeah.
Mm.
So when I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. And while at Alabama, I had some tough jobs in the summer and between semesters. In between semesters one year, I worked in a foundry because again, Anniston was part of the Pittsburgh of the South at that time. And it was relatively easy to get a job, and they paid pretty good.
Okay.
I also worked for UPS one summer, and they put me on the trucks offloading the parcels onto the conveyor, well, rollers at that time, for as they packed the trucks in the morning. And I had to put 40 parcels a minute on the rollers. I lost 20 pounds in the first month. Now they offered me
In
to
fact,
bring
you
me
go
into
work for UPS for about a week or two.
right, right. Now they offered to bring me into management and pay my way through college if I would permanently come to work for them.
Oh,
But I had worked so hard, I didn't tell my parents what they had offered. And when I went back to college that fall, I felt like I was on a vacation. Okay, when I graduated from college, after a period of time, I decided to apply for a government position. So the Department of Defense hired me, its Army component, as a civil servant. I was assigned to a position as an intern in Texas, so I went out to Texas, and that was as a transition from college to work in the federal government. After that initial assignment, I was sent back to Huntsville, Alabama, to work at the Army Missile Command. There, I initially worked again for the Patriot missile system, and I participated in maintaining the inventory for Patriot. And I was also on a team that positioned Patriot in Europe, all over Europe. And I participated in defining contracts with defense contractors, especially for Raytheon in the Boston area. Later, I accepted responsibility as a systems analyst. In that position, I had a job that impacted over 500 people. Only one person worked this particular job. So they didn't let just anybody work this job. And it was incredibly stressful, to say the least. Because if I did not fulfill my responsibilities, none of the other 500 employees could do their job. And I represented the Missile Command all over the country. Okay. Still later at the Missile Command, I became the general manager for a key component of the Kiowa Warrior helicopter system and the fire control system for the Cobra helicopter and the Hellfire missile system. Now, when my boss was out, I also had the responsibility for the TOW missile system, which was involved in all of that controversy, or what do they call it in the mid 80s? When they well, you heard about the TOW missile system. Well, a lot of people was sent home, and one guy committed suicide over it. Okay. When I left the Army Missile Command in Huntsville, I went to their headquarters level here in Washington, D.C. Now, at that level, I led groups of people who did my former jobs all over the world. I also became the leader for budget stratification all over the Army-wide, all over the world. And I became later the deputy program manager to establish and deploy a new management system at 600 locations throughout the Army worldwide. And in the meantime, I took a year off and obtained my first master's degree. And over that year, it was really a journey. I took 90 people to Panama to evaluate the impact of returning ownership to the Panamanian Canal to Panama. I also went to Mexico City to talk with the Mexican Army and the Mexican Navy. Now, they wouldn't talk to each other, but they would talk to us, okay? And then I also evaluated the interfaces with international financial markets on the Department of Defense when I went to Paris, France, Athens, Greece, Milan, Italy, Frankfurt, Germany, and Ontario, Canada that year. Now, stateside, I spent a month on Capitol Hill meeting with members of Congress. I also spent time on Wall Street and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and with some of the investment banking companies. After that year, I took a position in the Pentagon as the coordination of a board of generals responsible for the Army budget, both short-term and long-term. When I say short-term, I'm saying a two-year budget, and the long-term is a 7-year budget. And sometimes we would all actually have to evaluate out 20 years and maybe even to 50 or 60 years out in the future. Okay. After that, I took a position to evaluate the return on investment for all this money they were spending on military weapon systems and equipment. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then for the last 12 years of my career, I was a member of the Secretary of Defense staff, and I worked with congressional staffers. I accompanied assistant secretaries to testify before congressional committees. I worked with the White House National Security staff, and I worked with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now, that part of my position took me to Hawaii, Miami, Tampa, and St. Louis every 2 years. During that time, I completed coursework on a second master's degree. Over the years at the graduate level, I attended Georgetown, University of Massachusetts, University of Connecticut, and the National Defense University and George Mason University. Now, some of the lessons that I learned over that time, lessons in life, I would encourage young people to be confident, but be polite.
Yes.
Because I did some things that I didn't realize until other people told me about it. They told me that I always use the word thank you and please. And this made it a lot easier for them to work with me.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Others said that I always had a quiet confidence and had an attitude of we will not fail. Another lesson is not to generalize about people. Everyone is an individual. And then respect those in positions before you got there, because you'll need them to teach you.
Yeah.
And when you move or change careers, you're not supposed to know everything on day one. Just do your best. And that's my father told me. And eventually your best will become the best if you continue to do your best. And when you speak, you're not speaking only to persons on whom you are focused. Always remember that. You're speaking to everyone that can hear you. And some people forget that. Now, regarding memories of my parents and grandparents and the extended family, the first thing I remember about them is their commitment in their belief in God. And I also remember how committed they were to family. I remember how they managed to hold their dignity in the Jim Crow era. And they seemed to be able to do anything. Okay, here's some advice or reflections for the future generations. Be yourself. If others can be themselves, you can be yourself. You do not live in your power if you're not able to be yourself. If you think about it, the people that express themselves fully are in their power, and they don't let anybody keep them from fully expressing themselves. Okay, secondly, control your emotions and know your worth. Then determine the things, including information, which is relevant to your life's goals. You know how you have so much information available, and if you don't watch it, you'll get caught up in trying to absorb all of that information. But sift through it and determine what is important to you and what you're trying to do, your goals in life. Okay, think for yourself, but incorporate advice from successful people. Okay? You can't let other people be your mind. You have to own your own mind and use your own mind. Always know that no one is better than you. If someone can do something that you like, and you have a deep desire to do the same, you can do it. If you want to do something, do not listen to naysayers. Look at them to see if they are only complainers, to see if they are progressing on their own goals. Now, a defining moment for me would be maybe when I realized that why some of my classmates when I was a child were not in school every day during the spring. Those that I mentioned that had to pick cotton, I realized that they never had a chance. But I was given an opportunity to be the best that I could be because of my parents and grandparents. Another defining moment was when I realized that I was a leader. People always came to me for solutions and would put me in a place of being a reluctant leader, to say the least. Now, give you an example of that, and I'll be finished after I say this. When I went to Texas in that internship, they had exercises where they would take people in the group and they would serve as a leader of the group. So I served first for some reason. And from then on, anybody that was selected to lead the group, they would pull me off to the side and talk to me about what they should do before they talk to anybody else. Mm-hmm. But I was still a reluctant leader. I didn't want to be a leader. Okay. And I turned down a lot of jobs over my career because of that. But eventually I had to accept leadership. Okay. Now, that's all I had, Joanne, but I can answer any questions that you may have.
I think you basically covered everything. I do have one. Why did you not want to be a leader? I think you are an excellent leader. Just knowing what you have done and still do for this Blackwell Family Association.
Well, I guess what it is, had been so much focus on me when I was growing up. Okay. I just kind of wanted to blend in with everybody. Okay.
Okay.
And see, Anniston only had like 40,000 people. Well, there's 100,000 metropolitan area at that time, small metropolitan. Mm-hmm. And most of the people knew me. So I was kind of under a microscope in everything that I did. Okay. So I really wanted to just kind of blend in with everybody and relax after all that.
So now did you get your two masters? What specialty, I guess?
Okay, the first master's was in national resource strategy, okay, which includes national security strategy. You probably heard of those.
Yeah.
Of those terms, okay. The second master's was an MBA. Okay. And I got that through what they call the Defense Leadership and Management Program.
Thank you so much for sharing your memories and life experiences with us. Your story will now be a part of the living history of the Blackwell family, and it will help preserve the history of your limb of the family for generations to come. Again, thank you for spending time in conversation here at KinNections. So, people, there you have it. Real voices, real stories, real roots. Until next time, everyone, stay rooted in your history. Keep building those connections. And please share this video and please like and subscribe to this channel. Good night, good people.